supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the shackled clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. Founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the great destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Siddhartha, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the shackled clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When those supreme amongst humans shall have born on this earth, give peace to our seven strides, and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise men, I prostrate. In pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden fountain, flame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, born to you, I prostrate. In supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding. The field of merit with colleges like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, the dark darkness that binds I prostrate. Those who are liberated also show the path to liberation. The holy field of non-life realization, worthy motive to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community of thinking virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the supreme Buddha, homage to the tower refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three, without homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies, to all aspects, the supreme faith, I pay homage, to one committee of virtuous action, for all men perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, seek image of things as such. Through these merits we seek in beings attained from all seeing, subdue all faults and be delivered from samsarization, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. To page 15 for the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the narrowing temple journey. Thus did I hear at one time that the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive vaulted mountains in India, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration of attention of the non-manifold without perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasaya, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those high aggregates also as infinite the village Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasaya, Arahant Lord Vishnu. How should a distant ability train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that the Bodhisattva Mahasaya Arahant said this to the venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the Vishnu, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon the practice, beholding those high aggregates, also as empty of emptiness is not fullness also not non-emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, oppositional practice, oppositional Shariputra, likewise falls into nothingness, without
not deficient, not therefore emptiness. There is no form, no emanation, no composition or practice, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no mouth, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no I element, there is no me principle, distinction, difference, and so on, up to and including no agent, effect, and no extinction, beginning, and end. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no result, wisdom, no effect, and also no phenomenon. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no effect, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagawan rose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well, said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagawan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadaviputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagawan. To page 25 for the short mandala.
Chetsan Maratang Pachen Ki Chugu Kala Kenze Chinchini Chetara Sambe Dushe Zima Saje Chuji Chawa Abdu So Eda Guru Ranya Mandala Kamiriya Dayami Sanye Chudan Saje Chanama Chanju Badu Dani Tapsi Dage Jin Jive Sonamji Dola Benji Sangye Drupa Sanye Jadan Saje Chanama Chanju Badu Dani Jasun Dage Jin Jive Sonamji Dola Benji Sangye Drupa Sanye Jadan Saje Chanama Chanju Badu Dani Jasun Dage Jin Jive Sonamji Dola Benji Sangye Drupa Ninde jiwa zonan kuji ni jiden zakan da andola femba chinan lam chi ni jiden de zo kanda yanda de meduna na ma gonde na zo de zo wa ni de shi je fu sanje ji ne yim de la cha ze to ni ni je zo ne jo be la shi ji de ka je den de cha na be ma de je zo so wa de zo shi pande da la ma ra ma chen da ge ingara be me de ne ga de je me go ne zo de go zo de je go de so 당도 굴롱 komishido 다 굴롱 chanju simji simba chedsho a doris duwina chedsho simje tamje sanje gomba nyut to tiechid ane sanje gomba to lamjule jewala lam gomgola shebala togore tejidi togo yete ane tele jewa samadan tunadi datin desh samadan tunane 굴롱 di chanju simji sinro yoro.
First, correct intention of bodhicitta, a mind conjoined with the enlightened thought, with the thought to quickly place beings in the state of Buddhahood. In order to do that, one needs to cultivate a valid path. In order to cultivate a valid path, one needs to meditate on it. In order to meditate on it, one needs to know it. In order to do that, one needs to hear about it. We could do a vaster intention, but this essentially is a mind conjoined with bodhicitta.
nói đó cao gom lo 먼저 드림 이제 먼저지 된대질라서 퇴삼 지기 중어디 개바상무인티
Also rejoicing that we have the chance to listen to this ornament of clear realization, to hear it. Fortunate in that regard. Rejoice.
아예 다 너는 셴남래디 데지 셴남 tö남스 넘버 셴남스도 갈라고서는 빼는 건저 매도 덤베 미시스도와 매도 덤베 미시딜라 아니 셴남체 미시 다 매도 그런 매도 덤베 미시디게네 tö남체로 미시 셴남다 tö남스 라위나 네 셴남세디 야 셰워 코란라 코 유디 동니 셰워지요 봐 다란라 고고요 레스다
It's good if we understand what are the aspects of consciousness and what are the objects to be perceived by that consciousness in terms of the meaning. So, for example, the eye consciousness that perceives the flower is like the aspect of that consciousness in terms of its focal perception, or you could say another example of that focal perception is the wisdom consciousness realizing emptiness. Consciousness.
다들 먼저 단다 남진라에 가려고 그랬으나 산제기 주기 셔바들라 남진스기 요르바
But if we talk about an omniscient being, we talk about Namkyen, a continuum that knows all, an omniscient being.
제가 남진기 셴남스라디 셴남 야단 주요로 와서 야단 주 유디다 남진기 셴남스라디 남진기 유통의 찬에 아니 남진이기 아니 다조 on the chebe 야단 주시기요. 나도 뒤세게 말하다.
So then when we talk about this omniscient consciousness or a knower of all, we're talking about the aspects that it perceives. Although there are more, they can be subsumed into 110.
저는 디마 예와 체윤도니 따외나나 숨주된다 숨주자고 달시에서도 숨주된데 년들로 예와던 제스트면 남진이 신남 숨주자된 다된 간주 투브레 다로한테 톱셈브레 제가 년들로 예와던 제스트바스라윈데 남진이 마시야기 유딜레 아니 년들단 제스트 베나 덴바시도죠 제가 년도에다 제스도 년도에 다저 개만이샤시 방라연라게 창조소동 도주상마 저 년도에 냠슬라야 년도에 들을 하고 시다 년치려 요 말아 남진게 되게 차네 배 삼로 신이게 남제들라 년도에 요와데 제스도 남지시는 숨지잡되는데 다 기승 배진 톱셈 바제라
Okay. So then we look at the root verses from Ornament of Clear Realization and we come to hear that the aspects to be known of those 110 are 37, 34 and 39 respectively for hearers, bodhisattvas and exalted knowers of all. So if we look at the first, we know that the knower of all aspects has to know things in common with a hearer. So that means that what is in common with a hearer that a knower of all aspects is training in, that would be the Four Noble Truths, and then these other things like the four close placements of mindfulness, these other things like, eight branches and so forth, these 37 aspects we mentioned. So we've probably looked at that first set of those that train similar to hearers.
제가 남지기 아니 산지기 년도에 요 제스트베 람도서 니시고야다 곰 kunzu tokwa yoga kari nasidi 제가 단다디 러면 싱기상고 제베 되어진선나 근데 여러 람탐지 시와시지 람탐지 깨바듯이 람탐지 시와시라 대달람지 차와양 잘라송으로 아니 도 시진도 되잖아 아니 람깨와차 람시와차 근데스 망부 송용고도 다디 튼두디 제 도나라 수즈미시 요 말이야네 로브 싱기상고게 다는 원도jengi dewa lo singi sangbo ge 원도jen 자와지로 되게 dewa 튼세스니 지게베 요와 다디 원도jengi dewa 다 제두 참쇼당 다 시부지지게요 뭐마 갑델러와 다디 제전 디나나 람탐지 깨바차지 람탐지 시와차라 대달람지 자와양 차라 송인자 다 chanju semba dan sanje de zu sang ngela chanju semba de zu yang ane lam tamje sheba chigi yore sro ngendo ji lam ranje ji lam de zu ane sheba chaje ane lam jewa chego gyula jeni lam shizu de garesna oduse da sigi yore stene digi dewaro de la da dewaten ze dewa de la ne janda de gezorum mo namshi ningje na la khande yore slavian de ne 대단히 미기 술라 남께와 차와다 시와 차와다 미기 술라 따위 쓰지 마인지 란줄에 깨베고는 시와 차와이 시주저와 시세야 되는 좀 믹다네 시대야다 말해서 남대 수수 똑보다 수수 귤에 깨네 네 시와시야 되레스 체험도 전주 선바드즈 년들에 예배 시스템에 네 참반이 샤시 팔라일라게 전주 수도 어도 두즈 상마 덴바시 냠네디게 창마 전주선배 귤라 깨네 아니 시바 저 지고요 다 깨발로 공고로 봐 그래서 공발로 미코로 그래서 미코도 남바 샤고요 다 전주선배 근데 요 인자 곰곰곰곰디 곰베 타들라 산제 고마토로 봐 산제에 살라 디제게 남바 디제 탈심바디 요와디 독스전을 두고요 그래서
Then the question comes, why would a Buddha have to know all these things? Why would they train in knowing these other things for hearers and solitary realizers? Sengi Sangpo, who wrote a commentary of Ornament and Clear Realization, said that in order to know all paths, one has to first, cultivate them and then know them and realize them. And it's also said similarly in Parichan, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, that first, in order to actualize a path, you have to produce it. You have to know it. So there were many commentaries written on the root of Ornament of Clear Realization. But, Lopin Senki Sangpo actually said that in order to actualize all of these paths, first one has to know them and then cultivate them, train in them. And so, in that case, then, it is the Bodhisattva's responsibility to know what the hearers and solitary realizers need to know on a causal level, how they produce those particular realizations that will be manifest on the resultant level. It is not just that the eye consciousness sees its object. It is not like that. It is talking about the fact that the insights must be cultivated on the mental continuum of the practitioner in terms of the particular focal object and its aspect being realized. So therefore, the Bodhisattva's concern is to cultivate, in common with the hearers, these 4 close placements of mindfulness, the 8 branches of Aryas and 37 limbs and so forth. So then what are the Bodhisattvas doing? They are producing, they are knowing, they are meditating on the focal objects. And eventually the Bodhisattvas sustain such meditations until they take it to the limit of a Buddha, a knower of all aspects, an omniscient one. No.
제장 산제 전주 셈바다 요와 제스트 바라 연데 아니 전주 셈베 고미야 인게 조 고미야다 전주 셈베 조금 뭐 샤고로 와라 조금 냠렌치야 아니 디에 남지 줄에 요된 요데 어 미그베 차네 셰용고로 고 미운데 데 미그니기 셰바지 요로 다시 남지지 원주나시 튼지 남지 산제설로 똑바요 뭐로
야
상망 먼저 메도디 미시 메도 통나시 가득 배통도 요로 차상 최탐제 되면서 먼저 셈나를 텐데 요지 튼지로지 낙톰동 러지도 또 산제라 텐데체 말 상물로 배데 니마샤와나시 상물로 배 사댕딩 샤르데기 요로 차상 디인디 디기 남바다 닌도 전주 셈벌라 요와데 제수 남제시는 아니 숨지잡시 사치로
So we've probably then looked at that first division of things to be known, similar to the learner practitioners, these, 37 limbs, 8, and so forth. And now we come to the second division, the 34-fold division of what is to be known by bodhisattvas. So what these 34, what it's saying is that, you know, what are they mainly meditating on? What are the bodhisattvas mainly practicing? In terms of the focal object of consciousness. So like, it's not like we would see a flower. The Buddha, for example, would see all phenomena very clearly without generic image, but just like the sun rises. For us, when we try and think of phenomena, it is kind of dark. We have to have kind of an image of the thing. It's not like that for a Buddha. So what are the aspects that the Bodhisattva will train in, these 34 things, that are similar from the knower of all's perspective of Buddha? What are they?
제가 산제라 산제기 루주나라 근데 도와 똑바 당보 템바니샤게 류템바니샤게 똑바 당보 류라믹베 아니 템바 템보 지 니용도 장가라 안 류이나게 듀타모도서 당가자도스로 스틴데게 냠샤르고 요레스 전에 손도 되나시 산제를 좋나시 다 먼저 벽에 그다음에 규인적이 내는 냠렘바 베베게 아니 먼저 냠렘바던데 뭐마 진짜 다람사도 와요 된데 저기 다 당보 된데 지 셈게 내저라고지 셈디베 내저라고지 니용도 장가라 아니 수수 류그나게 지 두덴 상마 당가자도스래 당아랑 수고는 두덴 가져요데 신설의 삼상로시
Okay.
근데 그 냠나 똑바든데 연구에서 하셔서 당고 네 당고 수술을 여어되게 되고 신규스래 아니 되네 밀 네 친구도 신규스래
Okay. So, for example, honorable aspects of Buddha would first take as their first focal object close placement on the attributes of the body, close placement of mindfulness on body, and being able to go into equipoise with that as a focal object, knowing the number of subtle particles within the body. Some practitioners in Tibet had these attainments, or even in Dharamsala more recently, could place the mind single-pointedly on the body and be able to know almost like how many subtle particles abided therein. They had the insight of that. So one would assume that the Buddha first takes as a reference point the own form and then goes to these outer things, these other external phenomena. No.
제가 단단한 저 옥중 곰예 옥중 곰망부 잘라라
Yeah.
아니 단다 미 나다 대어요 미니제지로 나다 대어요 미니제지 다 민람나 야고요 말아 아니 미니제지게 콘솔라든데 냠청도 하던데 옥중 잡잡자 아니 셰와 세리기 차딩 거송네 와 직배 당고지 아니 진데 답수수 나와다만다서 동상 나와로 샤 외그란시로 샤 아니 다음에 차 셰와 세리기 차딩 거시는데 안 진데기 세리기 차디기 대다 가리나 신사를 삼사로 싫어 대다 디페 누가 전부시 대다 가리나 정말 신사를 삼사로 시지 딩원은 정말 야지 나용이래 디 정말 하고도 소리지 인데기 냠 연구도 없으네 말 되어 뉴미니 되지 인데 라송아 딩어마 자오르면치 송주지가래 디팅멍에마도 인데 송구도 아니 셰와 우주 공자변데 간상질라 당외차 셰와 세외차데 뭐였어인데 세외차 되게네 세리차 되게다 가리나에 신사래로 봐. 그 내단 가리나 데다 직신사를 삼상으로 보시는데 용거를 해서 이제 또 군두고만 해야 되는데 군두 근데 등만 먹고 송자. 세상에 단다 저런 방법이라 아니 다미 지라고 세워다 마지 남녀를 선상 랍지거는 가시에게 네 라워데 이지로 체제 봄잡되기도 잡되면 저절라에 냠네 똑바로 다 똑바니로 셈게 생모 처용 거요 근데 미 연구도 미 빼야고로 세상 다 망고진이 저런서 년년 망고진이 알레 켜버견자래 저절에는 예 펜시라 더 말아로 알레 켜버서자 펜 더 말아니 가시니 그 가사를 다 지라 라와디 찬조도 인지세에 개치게요 말이 지고야세 개요 말이 그 스스스 되버라 아니 딘데 진이들라니야 지 용되기도 하고 편비 이지로 제제 삼단데 뉴들라니야 이제 근데 지 용구도 찾아오던데 민니데 지ങ്ങൾ 근데 용구도 어디 칸데 딘데레 제제 계지 지송아 제상 따다다래데 생무처 셈게 생무처 용거래 이 빼야고로
I'm always encouraging us to train in breathing meditation a lot, and in dependence on that experience, one can come to know conventional nature of mind, which is clear and lucid, clear and knowing. A couple of people whose name I won't mention have shared some experience of the appearance of a clarity of mind. And that part of clarity, they can recognize it kind of continually by their experience. A couple of people have had that and shared that with me. So, I mean, previously, as Holiness said, what's very important with one's meditation is to be able to recognize this mind that has clarity and cognition, and the clarity part, to be able experientially to recognize that it's there all the time. And it's good. Some people got some advice from what I had said, and they maybe have gotten some taste or insight into that because they were desirous of doing so. And they put faith and effort into it and got the benefits. Others, things.
제단디 말데 셰바디 디 가리는 신설이 삼삼디 줄투세.
Yeah, so then the point was made that to constantly being able to recognize that clarity, to experience it there all the time.
어디로? 제단다 신남세디 디라트나 아니 신남세디 딱딱하고 그래.
Right, so we're coming back to this thing that was said earlier, Shenam. Shenam really means the subjective knower, the subjective aspect of mind that is constantly clear. Once you can recognize that, that's so good.
제가 다 신남세디 컨데질라고 그래서 마 틱라데게 여러봐. 저는 암전 고아진이 여름에 시지게 문에 신야라 수수 곰잡는 신기리다.
Okay.
곰 잡으면서 다 직디레 삼삼으로 직디 이제서 그래. 이제래 교란죠. 이제 지고랑 예셔버 이제 제로. 이제 제네 수수에 삼다운데 다 이제 때문에 돌아다. 어다 디인사래서 배나 메도디 아니 그 태남레샤스 메도신이 셔버디 셰남레 다 베징에 시기도 베제나래던데 다 디다가랑 삼로로 땅땅디 다가랑 인사래 삼나 이제로 다 고음잡네 당기나시네 쉐버세리 차데 아니 되게 데 메도 신이데 데르샤스 메도시베 쉐버데 데르샤스다 데 탭시베 쉐버 데르샤스 안스즈게 센나레 라트온데 다 신남데 ngo네 신버다 다 ngo네게 베제 탄다데 쉐버데드 디미슈 딩엘라 야고지 쉐요 말 이지지고 왔다 다 배드민턴 차송아 제가
Yeah, okay.
배드민턴다.
Okay, so coming back to this subjective knower, the aspect that knows, let's say, the subjective mind, I can explain that with words, but you actually have to meditate and experience it. And then your conviction is, so that's what was meant by this clarity of mind that knows. So then when you gain your experience into it, you get deeper, you get stable. For example, you look at a flower and you know, okay, so flower is the objective meaning. My mind is the subjective consciousness that is perceiving it, or a book. Similarly, and then you start to have conviction from one's own mind, this is what it means in the text, by subjective knower, an aspect i.e. object to be known. And then one starts to get into this cell-rig, which means that the meditation understands what clarity and cognition means, and by one's experience. No.
지난주 쉐베츠니 그래라는 세신 릭버바 세신 릭발 세상 세신세데 수수 냠뇽토네 뇨여토네 하고는 릭버사데 그 유디스 짐바 좋아 아주 짐바로래 다주 유디 말로버체 수 냐와래
Yeah.
세신 릭바 유디데스 마지나요 세상 다 쉐베츠니데 결혼도 진이하고 그래 쉐베츠니로 봐.
Yeah.
다 곰잖아 세버세데 용구였다. 남도 주미지 남도 이제 파파 가르되네. 차 세베 당자지 레기어로. 근데 당자되게 아니 유직 주고요 봐대. 아니 수수 곰잖아 하고요나. 아니 어디 다 쉐베 당당군에 신다. 쉐베 당다 신야래 곰잖아 메시 신야요 말다야.
We should know that the definition of consciousness is clear knowing, or cognition and experiencing. So clear in the sense that there's a clarity of consciousness, knowing or experiencing in the sense that it holds its object and doesn't lose it. So therefore, once the clarity appears, once you just recognize that clarity part, the mental constructs abate, and you can enter into knowing the object. But this only occurs through one's own meditation and effort. If there's no effort in meditation, you won't experience it.
어더 도스직 베저 단다 시에스나나 아니 전 지금 말다 가두이네 주 셈나를 탈렘렘렘 샤용거로 고 따다 스스 셈나게 냠뇽드네 셰베인자니 제를 때 삼다우다 람산 단다데 샥 그걸
Ale.
dimta beje shin said tooth beje
shin. And this is like mutual, like when you get the experience of the clarity of mind, you can reflect, so this is like what it says in the text, which is why it says you have to know your text, you have to know.
제가 먼저 뒤중 가려서는 다도스 랍디도 시기 베서체 안진데 파도 차즈는 지메 티워스티데 네 노트북 카드
yeah
베제 신요 말다 다요 말 쟁이 군부 쳇사르다 요 말
okay. So then there's a danger that you feign that you know it, but then you're asked, okay, so what is such and such? And then you go, where's my notebook? It's too late. You lost.
제단데 디 삼로 땅으로다 가서 디 단다데로 디 가래도 삼로당 베텐데체 니 삼로당 아니 디 베저디 삼로당 인지민지 공접 조조되고 말 공부제기 제기 칼라스고스고에 가와이나 고 삼로당으로 디 단다데 가래도 말 레레레체 다지 차시 더 쳐상마지 내가 차워로 베나 개차 차워도 디게데다 셈나라 배마 직파리로지 요이나 아니 디 템바데 파자데 포토부 쇼샤르와 다디 겨치만을 따다 야고지 로토고요다 근데서 파자샤도나 아니 겨데다 인직 ten야레 겨치만레 로랑랑저 직변나 저랑저 단다 진다데 셈 야고 시지 냠베이나 아니 산이 야고 텐 아니 진다지 마도와 텐오도 다단다 셈디 시라 상마다지 치로도 매 다단기 내주지지지 셈 체가 파로 체가 주로나 아니 던데 진짜 차스나 아니 낙테메 로샤그도로 지부지 기야래데
And contemplating the meaning by knowing the material doesn't mean just sitting still and meditating with kind of eyes closed, whatever. One can do this as one goes for a walk, prepares a meal, that type of reflection, so that step by step one's understanding of what one has studied becomes finer and finer and more subtle. So what's happening here is the imprints become thicker and thicker and stand you in good stead for future lives. And then also in this life, the mental recollection becomes stable. It's very much like if you listen well in this class, tomorrow you will have retained what was in this class. But if you're here 50-50, half out the window, you won't recall what was here.
어에다 제가 숨지 düğün다 숨지자 자주 선발해요 제스는 숨지 잡시디 먼저 장대에 럽 직동에라
도여라, 도사스. 더 연결 줘나?
아들라 녀베 람숨체 와 레야 숨지 잡시디 녀베 람숨체 통줄라 되네지 람가체 직된베 람구체 제 토이베
더.
아니 본람지는 저치마 시체 산제지 람주 디게라 숨지 잡시디 예데레스로 장대에
Let's go through again on the top of page 47 then. What are these 34? 6 divisions of 34 things the bodhisattvas must know. The first division is the path of antidotes, which are 3. Secondly, the paths of emanation are 3. The paths of abiding happily in this present life are 5. Supramundane paths are 9-fold. Paths of abandonment are 4. And finally, paths of Buddhas are 10, making 34.
Isn't true,
Yeah.
isn't true, code.
Isn't true, then Tama di Sangegi isn't true.
It isn't Jig me some she.
Dina
Chimashi, Sanjay Lamju. Jig me some she. Malayam, true love.
Nyembo, Truba, Tsedi.
Ponlamji and Chimashi, Sanjay Lamju. Didn't Malayam, two code. Yomar too. Dinner to the Bejan and two tea.
Do.
Yomar.
Okay.
Two Yomar, two high.
Nyembo,
Nyembo,
Trube, Tambo Nyembo.
Alele, or Tata. Nyembo Lamsum to do the Tata dish. Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, did it? Took the do what you are.
No. Slower. Of each one. Yes, so the first one has 3. You can just put the numbers next to the next one has 3.
Sum.
The third one has 5. The fourth one has 9. The fifth 4. And the last one 10.
Sum. Danyembe Lamsum said. Danyembe Lamsum de la Damon Kizina, she said, and with Sini, the Chictoshana and Yavodora.
Yeah. So now that first one of paths of antidotes, it's good, as we did last week, to go straight for the definition, which is on the meaning of the text.
Tadire, Nyambe Lamsum de Rangi Sejer Juve, Todogi, Shime Watobe Kone, Rangi Sejer Juve, Todo, Ani Jombar Juve, Jombar Nube, Rabdi Cheve, Kemba.
Yeah.
The Rangi Sejer Juvas like the Pechash and Zotangu Peshara, Tony Dobe Lamdo, Namjin Dobe Shashavina, and Tony Dobe, Rang Seja Karasana, Dinzi, Rang Seja Chu, Rang Seja di, and Seja Karasana, and Dinzi,
Yep.
Dinzi, Samuel Pajat Chevache.
Yep.
And Rang Seja Juve, Dodo, Sidishan, Dodo the Kare, Dinzi to the Dodorva. What Demba to a Mevala, Demba to a Yova Dodorva. The Shimi of a toss, this is a Dinzig Shimi of a Togora, Tuni Towenza, Dinzig Shimi of Togora. And I talk with Gone as in it, he talk with Chane, and Caesar Juve, Dodo Jumbo University. That Tony talk with Loti Ongi, and Tony was Mewa so much. Any Chinje Jang, but the Gia Mewa Sotubia. Tindeg New Way in Yedela, any Tando Kodishig Yorwa, and Tinde New Way in Kamba Namjedela. And the Nyembo Lamji seniors, Nyembo Sadi. Nyembo Lamsumroa.
Right, so let's look then at this definition. Let's take, for example, an exalted knower, a Buddha. The object is the primordial wisdom mind in equipoise on emptiness, or realizing emptiness. What is cleared away in this instance is grasping at true existence with its seeds and imprints. And what is being vanquished are these superimpositions. So you've taken a non-existent to truly exist. This is an exaggeration. This is to be cleared away. And what you realize is the non-existence. Shenyu, what you realize, your object of engagement, is the non-existence of such a superimposition. And then the mind has the power to, due to the familiarity with that, completely antidote all of those superimpositions, hence the definition.
Tati yewa rojire, namda kusum ji namba sumruwa,
Yeah.
menda rojire, namda kusum sayade, ane tongba ni tsema mewa, mumba mewa dela namda kusum sigo yoro, otindegi yewa sum rojire, ro.
So we would look then at the three divisions of that, which are said to be, in the middle of the page, the knowers of the three doors of liberation, which are emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness.
Tati cheju sumdi, ane chu tamjegi tingla, cheju sumdi yewa di shegi yore, ro. Ko tongba ni tsema mewa, mumba mewa sayade, chu tamjegi tingli, chu tamjegi tsingi tamje dina, chu tamje dina la duruwa di shegi yore takanda, ro.
Those three doors then, emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness, can be subsumed or applied to all phenomena. Nothing is missing.
Tadanda dina la dipeja dina la zo da dode gen da gundu sumzu di tiwa. Oda nganzo dema jigdor duj toginda ro.
Right. So now there are three different ways of, where it says decisive analysis, looking at these three doors of liberation. We see Vasubandhu's Treasury of Knowledge, Maitreya's text, and then finally Asanga's Compendium. We'll go through them in essential ways.
Tadango nganzo de ma she kon la de rob ji samna den shena ya gor. De rubda susu ge nabatwe ko dongbas na khare. 참아면서 하네. member 가서 단위의 체세 가지고 주시죠와 추 예와 체단데 텍스트시 단위의 죽단데 텍스트시 저기요 말어 어디시 왔다.
What's really being said then, in the sense that there are three different explanations, is that these conventions are set forth differently according to the tenet holder. Emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness, set forth differently according to their view.
그런데 저는 체미시에 넘버다 돈이다 매돈이 주배 뭐뭐 매번에 텔레신데 넘버 당스체는 송도와 자변은 다 체미시에 넘버스 체미 참매매바 넘버도 고 참매매바 써야 되라 아니 단다 고긴 단다 덴버시나라 봐 다디 딘실라 삼당고 가도에나 데 딘실라 저자고요 그래서 딘시나라 최탐제 뒤로고라 거라 주베림바 거라 도베림바 차다 거와 죽도 그 쳐지데 다 덴버시나라 최 탐제 디나라 누르고 요래 거라 주베림 배웠는데시네 주군준 덴바당 되부도데 거라 도베림 배웠는데시네 람데당 텔레티베 trewa 꼭den스 제제 디나라다 미네베 양대선 디나라 차자 누르고 요베 인자 다 단다 디 룹다디 치라마와이나 디나라다 기 디셰 디나라 자용 거래로
So then let's look at this quote from Vasubandhu's text. Signlessness, the aspects of pacification. Emptiness engages selflessness and emptiness. Wishlessness, the aspects of the truth other than them. Really, we are looking at the Four Noble Truths, because all phenomena, in terms of these, all phenomena can be subsumed in the Four Noble Truths. The way one enters into cycle of existence and the way it's reversed, vis-a-vis the first two truths, true sufferings, true origins, and lastly the reversal, true cessations and true paths. So we're looking at it from the point of view of the Chittamatrans, who focus on the first one, signlessness, true cessations.
다 딜라야 네 단다 치라마와게 다 체마메버스야 돼 꼭내기 넘버 아니 고버시와 전용이 진요. 디제 시체 디간라 디네 숙소 태양아체 포모당 아니 뒤제지 친이 숨스디 친이 깨워지고 내버려. 뒤제 친이 숨스디 깨워지고 내버. 다 디제 참마 주부텔라 미베 네 띵인진들라야 나바데베 고 참마메바스 다 지라메베 타니시단데 참마메바스야 돼.
So the way the Chittamawas set forth conventionally The first of these three doors is the door of signlessness, and in that they include all of the four aspects of true cessations, which are cessation, pacification, sublime, and definite emergence. Then the five objects of form and so forth, and the three characteristics of male and female come. And then the compounded phenomena, production, abiding, and disintegration. So that's their first door of signlessness, the door of liberation of that.
Pene duksire, ta kogdeng namba shide la tsema mebas lagu yo res.
Yeah.
Ni kare tsema meba res lawi na duje ge tsema yo ma res. Wa suso tyonga che, poda mo ongbo che, ani tsinyi jiso gawa sum che, judil duje yi tsinyi judi, ani kogdeng namba shile ya, ani meba yinzang, tsema meba sayadi.
Okay, so why is the signlessness the first door? Because everything within that subset, these true cessations, compound things, females, males, and so forth, they're pacified of inherent sign. So therefore...
다드네 동니 넘버데 동해된베 체주 와 동해된베 체주라 동안다메니와
Yeah.
딜라야 딩인지 넘버데 고동반이 있지.
The second then the meditative stabilization that observes the two, emptiness and selflessness of suffering, is the emptiness door of liberation.
지난디 더자변나는 세우동사 체미 시변 넘버 당사 넘버데 고 체마메버스 시변 넘버 고딩 넘버데라 체마메버스 야고레스 돈이 다음에 돈이 되스네 넘버데 고 동반이디 아니 동해디메 체지 동화다 돈이 동반이다 다음에원이데라 넘버데 고 동반메버
Yeah.
샤오레스 네 주버 멤버 메버 딜레 주버 멤버데 딜레시메 넘버 다 가를 하되어서는 군존데 맨 넘버 시다 네 동해데 맨 제주니 네 람댕게 제주다 제주 주로와 되지르다 람댕게 제주 시체 군존데 맨 제주 시 제체 동해데 맨 제주 다 미다 동해니라되어라 디제 수자변데 디제들라야 아니 그래 멤버메 봤으래 텔레신덴 텔레신바 템바 넘버데게라 아니 넘버
Right, so we can, if we refer back to Vasubandhu's Treasury of Knowledge, understand the enumeration. So, signlessness, the aspects of pacification, which includes true cessations and so forth, and these other things we mentioned, such as the objects of form, characteristics of male and female, and so forth. Then the second one engages in, the door of emptiness engages in selflessness and emptiness of true sufferings. Yeah, so those two aspects of that first noble truth. And the third door, wishlessness, all the other aspects not included in the above, remain in them. So what have we got left? We have got impermanence and suffering from true sufferings, and all of the true origins making 6. So that's how they set forth the 10. Good.
다 도대지는 가서는 띵인진 솜니 주유니 다음에 넘버 니보 당시제데 넘버되고 고동반이디
동반이라
동반이지 다 뒤에 된다니 대다게 시미시 넘버 미도고 잡지초 아니 다들 가단 템바고스 다데 나다 도대지에 나라 가서서나 다 넘버되고 고동반이 ts마면 몸배 매버서야데 다민이버디 넘버되고 고동반이 있어야 동에데 베체주스 주베네 다민이버디 아니
Yep. So now let's look at Maitreya's Ornament, the second dissemination of the 3 doors of liberation. First, there is the door of emptiness. Secondly, the door of signlessness. And thirdly, the door of wishlessness. So middle way down, page 48. If we look at the first one, the door of emptiness, we're looking at the non-conceptualization of the two selves, person and phenomena.
다디 아니 참아매버 세야들 때스면다 되스죠. 배나 미다 동에 제로와다 동에 대비 죄집니다. 동에 동화다면 로사로와 다 동에 대비 죄집니다. 동안이 군존된 배기 아니 군존된 배기 제주시 디젤라 아니 참아매버스라 그랬다. 참아매버 두디녀와 시베 냥데라 미네 고름시디 제가 데 아니 참아매버서야디 계시자서디 동해dembe 제주입니다. 동해제 군주dembe 제주 시티체 데라 아니 남바다고 참아매버스 샤레스타
Nipadirwa. Ditrokrawa.
툭샤서
Their way of setting forth is a little bit different. In the second door of signlessness, they have grouped together 6 attributes. So the 6 are impermanence and suffering from true sufferings, and then the 4 attributes of true origins. Yes.
다가 이제 베제 고된 더우러 싶이나 딘데서 보시 미다 동해 미다치 아니 동해치 운중 넘버 디게디 아니 고den기 냥데기 고den기 넘버 시여와 되게 참아매봐 될라 참아매봐 자면로 뒤제기 다디 되제 독den기 아니 참아시바 신 샤고스를 베지 고된 고아제로다 이 삼로 간에 다나데 내르시 다디 이나 게 내르시 고도 다다다 이나면 하고 가르스나 단다 디나마다 연데 미다 동에 군중의 제주 시제 되게
어디 트럭로와?
축디 갑지 초스다 시베 냥데라 미네 갑지 초스디 냥데라야다 아니 묘모 딱 코와라 죽베 림바틀레 참마메바 와 다다 코아딜리기도 갑지 초고서야 돼 다다 딜리기도
Okay. So, yeah, okay, just go. So this second one of a division of 6, signlessness in the sense that there is this word here called turning away, jabjichok. So that means, what are they turning away from? They're looking at peace vis-a-vis the attributes of true cessations and turning away from impermanence, suffering, the true origins, and so forth. So what they're turning away from entering into cyclic existence inherently. So therefore, signlessness.
그런데 다다 책이요. 답변은 먼저 찬주선배주가 아니 독den춘의 요 말아. 독den게 참아 요 말아. 제가 곡된 토비온데 독den게 참아 요 말아. 독den게 참아 매번 인자 아니 텔라 잡지 초고 직제로.
Okay. So let's look at it practically. In the mental continuum of a bodhisattva, they've reached a true cessation. So in their minds, there are no signs of true sufferings. So they've turned away from them. Yeah. It's called turning away.
디 람딩 넘버 시딜로 멤버 메버스라고다. 몸에 준세스는 가와던 템베 넘버 임비시스. 가와던 템에서는 디 뇨모초 도dengi 다 베나 코에기 레다 뇨모옹 추웨 아니 중니기 유군조 템바다 도den레 잡지 촉바딜라 딜레야다 가와던 템바스로 가와던 템바 인디다 람딩 넘버 시디 가와던 템바다 차데요로 디다다도 멤버 메버시다.
Yeah, and the door of wishlessness, taking true paths, the attributes of that, it's not turning away, but there's a tremendous joy because one is the joy of being beyond karma and disturbing emotions, the resultant level of it, true sufferings and the causal level of it, true origins. There's joy in being beyond that.
다디네 숨바 군두레 송주네 다단다 갑비 쪼디 단다 군두 송주디 시샤르 스토고요 다티균로.
So then we'll go into the way of explaining in Asangya's compendium of knowledge.
다딘시메다 주두기 나네 와 아니 넘버 주두기 나네 동반이기 넘버 2 주시는 니제 아니 멤버메메 넘버시는 tuk제와 참마메메 넘버 2시는 게스다 어디래.
The aspects are 2 aspects of the door of emptiness, page 48, 6 aspects for wishlessness, and 8 of signlessness.
다 배나 딜리서 니디 가레스나 다들 동안다 담에디 거디보다 동의dimbe 취지서 동안 담에 니디 넘바도 고 동바 니체로.
So this view is according to, what do we say, our school or our Omarangupara.
예.
Yeah, middle way autonomous view. So the first 2 are the emptiness and selflessness is the door of liberation, the attributes of true sufferings.
다데네 니디 다 툭디 가레라 윈디 다 동의dimbe 취지 미다 동의 체 군중 넘바 시시 디그 툭디게라 아니 디레스 가서라 참마메와.
The second of Semameberve, Mebamebamarve.
참마메베 넘바 멤바메베 넘바 2 멤바메베 넘바 2 쇼.
The second is the door of wishlessness, and the 6 are impermanent suffering, 4 attributes of true origins.
지난디 당이다
There's still some other.
예 맞다다르다 다라리.
Okay.
단 멤바메바 다라 당강게 도디징 송주단 드라마송아 건직베이나 양자인제 송고에 말와 디 관련된 드라마송으로 그래서는 멤바메베 넘버들을 툭디 가려서는 미다다 동에도 단다 군중들의 계주 시제 동에들의 계주 니데 안에 멤바메베 넘버 제로.
So 6 set out in terms of wishlessness, impermanent suffering, and the 4 attributes of true origins. They are set out differently here to those above, which was Maitreya's explanation.
다디 게디 동에들의 람댕기 계주시 고댕 계주시 디게라 아니 참마메와. 로 예디
Yeah.
람댕기 계주시 고댕 계주시 게여로 딜라야 아니 참마메 넘버레스다.
And then the final 8 are the attributes of true paths and true cessations, which are the signlessness ones. The door of signlessness.
예, 도디젠 숭바디 주 카세얼 담베 소리도도.
I think this latter explanation is clear.
예나라 탕데메버디 세부면도 델라 탕데 세부 셰용도 베진 디스레. 도.
Yeah, this last explanation has them enumerated 2, 6, and 8, whereas the Dodegin, Maitreya's text above, does not.
다야 단다 딜라고요레. 나 추찌기 띵라. 다다 단다 딘시기 넘버 주룩디 아니 넘버도 고동과 멤버만 참마메발에 자는 곳이 겨러다. 디 조단직 차라다. 템바시기 셰단데 조사셔로. 다야 추찌기 띵라야 배낭한서 탭더버지기 띵라야. 아니 남다 고성기 제주디지 차사 추 탐제기 띵라. 켜버직 시고로.
So looking at the 3 doors in terms of all of the 16 aspects of the 4 Noble Truths have been covered with those doors, but you can look at it in dependence on one phenomena such as a book or all phenomena.
배나 탭기 띵기 아니 동반이 있어요. 탭기 고 탭기 고 탭기 주 탭기 데블 삼단 디고로 탭기 고랑 고 탭기 주 탭기 데블 삼단으로.
Right, let's look at these 3 then, just looking at the book's nature or voidness. It's empty, that's its entity, then it has cause and result.
다 탭기 고디 템버드베 동.
Yeah, the entity of the book, its nature is that it lacks inherent existence, isn't it?
다 탭디 줄라데네 주는 게어와. 다 아니 주디 템버드베 주 참메시와 참마메와.
And the book is a product of causes, but those causes are pacified of inherent sign. So they're signless.
다 디 devu yoro야 고 뒤제는 그 devu yoro다 고
Yeah.
뒤제는 그 devu에 켜러다 고 필요 치면 뒤제주 여러다 대구 devu지 여러다
Yeah.
대구 devu디 엔 덴버드웨기 devu 맘바메와 덴버드웨 devu지 여러에서다 맘바메와 셰트웨요 말해서 거라 셰요 말해서 거다
And every cause has to have a result, isn't it? So the resultant book is wishless, is that you couldn't wish for it to be inherent because it's a result.
다음서 뒤제래 있는데 잘래라고 차송으로 또 두머제를 자야디 최탐제 딩리 요송으로 남다 구성 체주디 변나단다 니디나라 요래단다 좀 되긴도 파고 유고 준 시외도 파고 유고 준 시외도 세저로
Yeah.
디나라야니 동바시와 깨와매외츠 미시반이 도와 침주가서 동바시와 깨와매와 디제디 내단디 미시베 온게 아니 도와 코알레 참도고 요레스 엔티다 투징의 탑주지 리과 자다진을 두가세 대다 제가 좀 된데지 투지 원게 리베 남다 투마 자다스디 투마 망보지 송제네 지 다 덴버두가 덴버두가다 짐베 시야 치드 근데 송레송라 제가 간다디 남다 고성 남셔야지 마시니 먼저 다 디왕게 차단 차소 집회 차소 안경어서 콜 코디요레스 좀 된데 노라나라든지 세고 빼요레로
It is easier to understand the three doors of liberation with regards to compound things, these products. It is more difficult. It takes a bit more thought with regards to non-compounds or permanent phenomena. We hear from Sutra when Buddha said, because sentient beings are unaware of the entity of phenomena in terms of their emptiness, pacification and production, they wander aimlessly in cyclic existence and suffer. Seeing this out of great compassion, Buddha set forth thousands of stainless reasonings so that beings could come to see the lack of true existence of things. So what we're getting from this quote from Sutra is the importance of these three doors.
And then 디 뒤제라 샤야디다 규단 되불 렐하고도와
Yeah.
다 두마체게 딱보도 졸라 딱보라 규데 되요 말봐 아니 참마메와도 마마메와서 ngoboda 샤조로 ngobo데 뭐데 동어디 샤조로 대 규단 아니 되우메베 인자 아니 참마메와도 마마메와서디 가와제 그랬다 디 도바디 리기오레
Okay. Signs and wish. Now, it's all very well with compound things to establish, the three doors because there's a cause and effect process taking place, but with permanent phenomena, there's no cause and effect, isn't it? Well, we know by entity, permanent things, that first door, they lack inherent existence, but we can't posit cause and effect. So then the question comes, what about the other two doors of signlessness and wishlessness? How are they established with regards to permanent phenomena?
다디 차질레스는 잖아 차질레스는 자고요 레스와
Cha-che lesung. So then we can look at it in terms of chaos and the chepaporwa.
지워보 차와 차베
Yeah.
차베 유
Tamatama le se di chawa.
차와티
Yeah. So we can look at it in terms of agent, object, and action. These three.
베나 난가도 오실러와 누마체기 난가도 오실 딱 벌어갖고
Yep.
다디 난가코나 차와 유 들어와 차와로 와다
Yep.
다디 이니 저거보다 쓰레라비인데 난가도 왜 참아져로 당봉일 디시 난가도 왜 참아디 아니 저거보다시 다 되게 다 레스나리 차와 제워져라다 차와 제워도 가려요라나 아니 난가도 왜 참에 난가도 바디 아니 거기다 레르와고 차지 레스므로 와
Yeah, so these three can be looked at like this. There is the object, which is space, which we're taking to lack true existence. Then there's the person, the subjective consciousness, that's realizing that space is empty or lacks true existence. Then there's the act of the perception, the act of actually perceiving it as empty. So those three.
다비는 대화 컨데 장르스는 난게 오디 템버드베 동어디 셴모고시 디
The tongbanirwa.
도 동바디 셰라
No need to say emptiness itself is that door of liberation of lacking true existence.
다 난가 똑베 체마 디 템버드베 체마 메바 고 뒤제로 와다 와
Yeah.
템버드베 체마 메바 템버드베 체마에게 난가똑 템버드베
The
체마
shepakoranwa.
chebaati nangatokwe tsema digo duje sonza di tembotubeyaji yo maraba tembotube tsema meba ta.
Now, the person doing the discriminating of the lack of inherent existence of form, because it's a type of discrimination, it doesn't exist inherently, so it's free of inherent sign. So it's signless.
다 nangatokwe tseme nangatokwe chawarwa.
Yeah.
Chawadi 아니 tembotube memba meba sura. 다 다다 얘기도 돼.
Yeah, and then what we have left is the action of that perception lacks true existence, so there's wishlessness.
nangatokwe tseme nangatokbati tembotube memba meba sura. 다 자도와 고 nangal라 된 자도 뒤제를 자다. 뒤쪽에 담제를 자적으로.
Yeah. So Yangyur Gishla?
nangatokwe tseme nangatokbati 고 chawarwada chawa chewarwada. 레스나 리그리잖아. 더. 디 아니 tembotube memba meba. tembotube야지 또야지 요 말에서 tembo 마두베지 또 그러면서 tembo 마두베 난가지 또 그러면서 tembotube야기 난가지 난가도베 체면 난가도 버틸라 자와디.
So the action of perceiving space as lacking true existence, that also is lacking true existence, so it's wishlessness. So all those can be applied to all phenomena therein.
다디 남다 고숨디 내갑디 다링다 주란조 랑종도 체제 야고지 셰베치 두비 있는 당봉에라 뒤제라 셴나 두메체 개요 말인데 뒤제라 야고 셴나 나란조 단다 나란조 안조게 빼나 규창마 템버두버 징겨라 안조 대우 템버두버 징겨래 규 템버두버 된 규 템버두버 칸데 징거스는 안조 탭디 탭기 유가네 탭키싱 요래 계산다 드링딩이 찍받다서나나 ngaji jin지로와 ngaji jin지 계산기 주되다 계산기 탭되다 드링기 탭디 찍받다서나나 딱받다로와 다 계산기 탭되야 베데 칸라 되메지라원에 두어지레 삼산지 샤스나나 아니 디다다 덴버투 먼저다 데바라 미베 나와샤운디 정말 덴버투 나용고래 근데 나와디 나시 아니 셴밤 timba이나 아니 규상마 템버투가 진로고요레와 테나시 아니 데블레 데레 간솔 삼로다요인데 데부다 지요와 삼로다요인데 데야 나와 간솔은 답 템버투가 나 임버레 안데 오늘 레서 이지체 진스나나 야 템버투가 진사레 당봉에라 규단 데부 오디 내야지 템버투 마두 징기도 nga지 찍듯이 삼로 망고다 삼로다에 망고다로 이 삼로다 아니 이 삼로데 스탄투메나 아니 덴보차야다 다 알아서 차소뉴몬다 직생기 강에다 동에다 차다다 망고지 계속 상만 대화니 깨용으로다 그래서 다 줘야라 레 카부도 알아 말한 상만 찍고 인샤샤로 도 상만 다 인샤샤로 좀 삼로 시라 당겨 말 그래서 다 남다 고슴데 좀되는 막 직세 세보로 지대야 부타로 지 카세로 지 도용고 여러고 뭐왜 용어에 내주 땡을 비슷하더라.
Leaving aside contemplating non-compound things or space from the perspective of the three doors of liberation, it would be better to contemplate functioning things, impermanent things, such as the cause and result, the lack of the truly existent cause and the lack of the truly existent result. Just for example, if you think this book was the same book it was yesterday, you're clinging to the book being permanent, and in dependence on that appearance of the book clinging to its permanence, latterly You could also believe that exists inherently. Well, that's grasping at an inherent book. So it is good for our minds to do this type of thorough analysis of cause and effect in terms of the things that are appearing to our minds around us. Oh, sorry, Gisela. So, and we should examine the things around us in terms of their appearance and result, because actually the book is also the result of yesterday's book. So you could cling to the book being the same as yesterday. So even in terms of the effect, we are clinging mistakenly to its, to its permanence. We take, somehow we see these things around us and we take them to all be the same. This is mistaken. It would be much better to examine them in the light of these three doors. No, Gisela. Dembashi.
Tanda dinshi mida chudukdiya namda kusungala jadande tanda zödan dodi jendi mashina umbo kundu ki jadan shidwa tangdin shidwa nidan kare tukdan ge shidwa nidan tuk ge che ane wa dilaya da tangadi godongba nyi ma tsamamewa jadande ane jik samle nangla ma tangaji niya dinshi mida chudukdi samlenala 양자직 레고다 다 디시메다 주룩디 다 제주디 기생 결혼zo 요구 자야라디 다 심나는 게 뭐차고 개좀 모래로
Again, this subject of the Four Noble Truths and understanding it by the way of the 16 attributes has come up, and during the week it is good if we thoroughly acquaint ourselves with that again in light of these different, divisions or setting forth of these three doors of liberation according to the different texts, tenets. For example, the last one we looked at, the Sangha's Compendium of Knowledge, that division of 2, 6, and 8 is useful for us to reflect and know.
Oh, yeah, that is right.
We dedicate now.
Page 31 for the short mandala.
Rene Mendela Kamnia Dayami.
Page 33 for prayers of dedication. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of pure Buddha, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddha stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication grace.
탐제적
Terribly kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled.